Okay, we are entering the final thematic track of the conference, the Reach track, which is powered by Kantar. Building a strong brand in digital is more important than ever. Lockdowns have changed the way consumers use media. Some behaviors will come back to normal, but others are here to stay. To open the final session of the conference, our keynote speaker will be guiding us on turning up the volume where creativity and emotions in advertising matter more than ever. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the media and communications lead at Kantar Malaysia, Mako Chaves.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the conference. Today is the fourth day, and thank you for spending the last 4 days with us. All very relevant and timely topics throughout from different colors and flavors of data and digital. Thank you for joining me today for the Reach track, which, to my interpretation, is all about making meaningful connections. In line with the overarching theme of this conference, I'll share with you how data can help in making better business decisions. But before we start, let me get a few things out of the way and set the context for this afternoon's sharing. The pandemic has been somewhat the star, no pun intended, of the show so far. It has certainly changed the Malaysia business landscape in many ways than one. COVID was the biggest agent of change, innovation, and business overhauls, and in fact, transformation. In the communications industry alone, COVID stopped advertisers in its tracks. Some have moved along, and some are just warming up again. And how are businesses welcoming this change? In a survey done by Kantar, there are 5 key transformation areas that businesses in Malaysia want to focus on, chief of which is marketing and sales strategies, which also covers strengthening e-commerce platform, which has become a ubiquitous channel throughout the pandemic. And one area that is likewise interesting is better and faster access to data, which means the need to be informed and help in decision-making. Then there's more good news. Malaysia's digital transformation is the highest in the Southeast Asian region when it comes to increasing or introducing e-commerce capabilities. This is certainly a good sign because we are turning around the consequences of COVID into something more positive. It is a full ahead for e-commerce in Malaysia. We have been very quick to recognize digitization and to adopt e-commerce with existing available facilities and avenues. However, there are still development stages, for example, creating new channels in place of physical ones, and not yet developing crucial customer experience or differentiation between online and offline channels. Virtually every business we interviewed for this study agreed that consumer behavior has changed for the better, whether it is how they shop, their product needs, or the customer service needs. We need to reset what we know about consumers' behavior in the future. History has taught us that businesses that are brave during recessionary periods rebound much stronger. And as the MCO progresses with no clear sight of when the pandemic would end, there is just a future tendency for people to keep preferring e-commerce. And when it comes to channels that Malaysians are using the most, digital platforms are becoming very prominent, given the restrictions to limited movement to go out. The very apt phrase of working from home is no longer the exception, and it has certainly pushed at-home media even higher. For example, surfing, video consumption, and social network are still the highest activities observed mainly for entertainment. Widespread apps have gone up even more, and new entrants like the very fun TikTok are reshaping the landscape. And each time spent has likewise increased, some to as high as 30%. And thus you see is gonna be a lot of scrolls, a lot of swipes, and a lot of skips as well. So the new stage is set for the businesses in Malaysia, and how do we now perform in this new stage? The bigger question ahead that we need to ask is in fact, certainly, there will be more data, and how do you use them? Secondly, the trilogy of content, context, and creativity will ever be more important, and how should we work towards optimizing them? And of course, lastly, as there will be air of uncertainty, the need for speed and agility will always be there to adapt to new scenarios. And how do we leverage our top technology to help us go through? We've all seen this very familiar framework of meaningful connections, and they remain fundamentally the same. From identifying your audiences, to planning strategies, to detailing your activities and measuring how your plan is delivered. During the pandemic, they remain the same, however, with some new considerations to ensure that we are cognizant of the changes of COVID's impact. Chief of which is audience migration, mainly moving to digital. Secondly is the fact that we're doing more digital activities now, including rewriting or reinforcing our strategies on digital. And lastly, being mindful of not just the short, but also our long-term goals as a brand. On that note, I will be sharing with you 6 must-dos in a post-COVID world, and I hope you learn a nugget or two. So let's get right to it. Some of us are obsessed with having a digital strategy when in fact we should have a strategy on digital. And the shift in focus makes all the difference. Digital activities have typically increased with more platforms being considered. Some marketers are rushing towards churning out digital plans left and right, but often they're not recalibrating for the new normal, including reassessing how fit the platforms are. And thirdly, having the right combination of media is critical because it adds to at least 19%, not 0%, 19% in ROI. So we get this question a lot, and as to what the best role for media, for digital is, or if digital can help build brands. And this is an analysis from a cross-media database where we created the share of impact for each of the media. As you can see, all media have an impact in parts of the funnel, but clearly some media work better in some parts. For example, TV or cinema on building brand awareness. You have online video on motivation. And thirdly, you have social media for association. And there's also the need for you to combine different media like TV, video, and social media to have a better impact across the funnel. So yes, to answer the question, digital definitely have a role in the funnel, which ultimately leads to brand building. And if you have to synergize digital activities with other media, what would it be? All channels, as you see in this chart, see brand building benefits from synergies. But some channels work particularly well with each other. For example, the strongest synergies that we saw are observed between television and Facebook and out-of-home and newspapers. It does vary, though, from category to category, from brand maturity or in advertising, as well as how long the brand has been in the market. The point is, marketers should know what synergies are working best for their categories as well as for their brands. Knowing which media to activate can also spell the difference between having just a 19% higher in ROI from using just 2 media, or as high as 35% by using 5 different media channels. Do more with less. We hear this very often in the advertising and research industry, and we can't escape it. But I think the right question, in fact, to pose is, you have to be wiser with less. Doing a lot does not even mean, or doesn't often mean, you're doing the right things. But being wiser suggests that your approach is sound. And one of the wisest things to do in spending smarter and bigger, and not bigger, correct me. And the wise marketers know where to spend, including which pieces of content to invest behind. And this is important because our studies have shown that customizing content to digital platforms will increase campaign impact by as much as 67%. And in Malaysia, businesses have recognized the need for a fresh understanding of communications in order to talk to and talk better with consumers. This is the new numbers that we're seeing in post-COVID, which is a good one. And one of the most impactful ways that we know of communication is definitely through advertising. For the most part, in Malaysia, advertising is a welcome distraction, especially in the pandemic. Consumers perceive advertising as a relief or a promise. I'm showing you here some of the 6 reasons and verbatims that we got from consumers about what they think about advertising during the pandemic. For example, they look at ads to help them escape about the worries in the pandemic. People need a diversion from what's going on. More people are like watching television. And post-pandemic, there are 3 themes that we think brands can consider when they develop their next pieces of content for consumers. Number 1 is that content should entertain and engage. Number 2, the content should be fun. And number 3, if you have the recycled content or your previous content, it still can work. And let me take you some of the examples. Number 1, for example, to illustrate, this is an example from KTM where they post a chart mapping out station stops at home during the MCO to entertain the public. Instead of the usual map title, it's simply read Stay Home Route Map, which drives the message very clear. Secondly, Unify advertisement of Mesh does not quote the current MCO situation, and it is accompanied instead with humor and social gathering, which is warmly received by viewers. Very relevant. It was situational that everyone understood without having to remind people about the situation that we are all in. And brands was neatly woven into the story as well. And thirdly, if you have no time to shoot for a new content, not a problem. For example, DJ repackaged his previous messages of staying connected in his DG Cares ads, and it became relevant again due to the current context. And if marketers want great confidence in their decisions as to which pieces of content they should put investment behind, there is Link for that. An extremely powerful tool that will give you the right answers that you often ask. And right now, we are also able to confidently answer. And I'm going to share with you this video. So it comes in the dashboard. You have a snapshot of diagnosis and it's performed ads, engagement, brand consideration. For example, if it's engagement, is your ad engaging an ad link in the brand? You're able to see that. You have measures for that right from the dashboard. It will help you in identifying whether your ad is delivering on that particular metric. It also incorporates facial coding in our system, where the system 1 measurement or emotional responses. Overall reaction is being captured in expressiveness right in front of you. You're also able to answer, is my ad helping you? Persuasion measures also increase in short-term purchases, intention, and brought to you by the brand. Right, so Link empowers marketers. With Link, you can test digital now, TV, print, radio, even outdoor content at speed. Not only that, you will have confidence, data-driven decisions about what works and how to optimize your creative. Kantar is the only leading full-service research agency to have a dedicated global neuroscience practice. We've already assessed masses of ads with facial coding, enabling us to tell you what the unfiltered response is for your content. We think marketers would love it the moment they try it. Third one, all brands have a desire to be seen or heard for the right reasons, of course. But there's also one desire that I think we should aim for as well, and that is to come up in search results relevantly. In this digital age, the importance of search behavior cannot be overstated. Share of search is probably a metric that we should be hearing more of, because based on our research showing our brand's share of search is a strong indication of salience, and higher salience often lead to sales. Share of search is defined as a volume of search queries for a brand as a proportion of all the search queries for all the brands defined in a category. It's based on exactly the same principle as share of market, but it uses the number of times a brand's name is being typed on Google. We know it's very simplistic, but often neglected. Our experts say that share of search can be a successor to share of voice, or it can be an accurate lead indicator of market share. In fact, share of search is getting more attention now, and quite rightly so. It's proven to be an indicative of important brand outcomes, and when used in combination with other brand indicators, has the potential to identify opportunities for brands to grow. It is particularly, in this particular example, brands above the line are generating more search interest than expected, while the reverse is true for those who belong below the line. We can take this analysis a step further and use it to estimate how levels of search are likely to be impacted if you spend more or less to make better decisions. Not only is search data one of the most powerful sources of insights, we recognize that there's also sales, survey, media spends, or even external data because they are as rich. We have made significant investment in the development of a platform that crunches data and finds meaning in the organized chaos. We call this the Integrated Insights Engine, which answers some of a marketer's most challenging business questions or prompts him or her to act on underlying trends before competition does. And the fourth one, must-do resolve, is around the trilogy, or what we call the 3 C's of content, context, and creativity. It's one of the toughest to crack, to be honest, but when you do, it's one of the most rewarding as well. And what do we mean by this? Having the right content deserves to be in the right context. They need to be in sync. And the ones who consistently do this are often the brands, or often the most profitable ones, are usually the brands that we know and love who have devoted time and investment in research. We have run an analysis in cross-media database, and we have found that all starts with a very good creative. Creative accounts for 50% of impact, while media accounts for the other 50%. However, further challenge in digital, as we know, is no two digital platforms work in the same way. In Facebook, you need to grab attention and literally stop consumers in their tracks. In Instagram, it's a different story. It's visual quality is the name of the game. In Twitter, it has to be love at first sight. And of course, lastly, for example, you have Snapchat and TikTok, where entertainment that is enjoyable and is the most one that gets the highest engagement. And to make digital more interesting, TikTok decided to join in on the fun. TikTok is the fastest growing platform in the world and has reached comparable levels of Twitter in Malaysia in some user segments, especially the young ones. However, less than half of marketers are testing little to no content at all. And for the most part, the reason is because cost and the time it takes for results to become available has been very challenging. We've all changed that. We are now able to overcome cost and time barriers by leveraging on technology. In terms of cost of testing, it's about a quarter of the cost compared to how it is done before. Context Lab is a solution underpinned by technology, which enables marketers to test the efficacy of content on a test site. This allows us to control advertising or pieces of content without a live campaign. This realistic testing means that we can recommend optimal context to drive your brands depending on the consumer's response. We can use this approach for paid media, influencer activity, or any other different context within an individual platform or website. And if previously it takes about a month for results to be available, you can now have them in as fast as 48 hours. And we think marketers would also really love this when they try it. The fifth one, e-commerce. We've heard about our experts on this very stage a couple of days ago, and I'm sure we've learned a lot from them as well. And I don't have to hammer the importance of e-commerce, but if you allow me to make another reminder, it is to design for shopper centricity. What does it mean to be shopper-centric in this online context? It's essentially removing all the possible barriers to conversion. And some of those barriers are operational, for example, delivery, payment methods, and shipping costs. And one loop that marketers should strongly capitalize as people flock to the digital space is what we call C-commerce or conversational commerce. C-commerce is any online commerce activity that uses a conversation interface to speak directly to consumers. I think some of you may have experienced this. It can take the form of, for example, a chat box, either using a bot or humans, or a messaging platform like WhatsApp or even Viber, or other natural language interface, for example, hey Alexa, add a sanitizer to my cart. In Malaysia, brands like Unify, AirAsia, and Maxis have capitalized on this technology, and we think this will be the new norm in making meaningful, stronger connections with brands to consumers. Finally, and certainly not the least, is about measurement. We keep on reminding our partners that if they have been spending so much time and energy on how to brilliantly execute a plan, they also need to have a plan to evaluate how they are performing. How did my campaign perform overall? And what brand building role did each channel play? Which channels build my brand most efficiently? How can I improve my media mix in my next campaign? Very tough questions that need a great deal of research to be answered. In fact, advanced modeling now allows us to compare exposure levels with brand attitudes in order to understand which channels have generated which kind of brand response. Our analytic routines, for example, have ensured that we only identify real and significant media contributions. Evaluating performance will be an all-win situation because you'll know what to do next in your campaigns. In this particular example, TV across the board is delivering across all the brand metrics. However, if you look at online display, while your share of spend may be less, it's delivering very high on the third brand metric. And you have to be very cognizant of all these contributions across your brand metrics because it influences how much investments you need to put behind each of your media. Okay, very quickly, there you have it, 6 must-dos, and I hope you'll apply as much of them when you think about having your next digital strategy on digital. These 6 fall neatly into the communications framework that we are already familiar with. Okay, this whole conference has taught us so much about data and how-tos of digital. Today, we've added one more, which is the importance of content, context, and creativity, as well as why speed and agility should be our new way of working. These are not new buzzwords, but they are certainly take on a new meaning in a post-COVID world. To wrap, however, whoever we think is able to adapt to new conditions, is open to what data is telling them, to those who are brave, we think will recover quickly and win 2021. And as a welcome to the holidays, we at Kantar would like to give a gift to everybody to help set your course for the coming year. There's nothing more we'd like to see than all of us coming out much better than how we started 2020. We'll make this available for you to download, or if you scan the QR code that you see on your screen now, our 2021 Media Trends and Predictions. And that's it for me this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I'll see you in the panel talk a little later.